Hello, good evening. Just going to give it a few minutes to let a few people come in here, and then we'll get straight into things. If you're here already, drop us a message in the chat, say hi. Hey, Armin, hello. I'm not so bad, how are you doing? Shame the weather's not too nice today, isn't it? Cool, right. Good. So, how do I see? Cool. So, just while I let a few people come in here, I am going to play a track for you guys. I played you some of this stuff a little while ago. Actually, I've been playing it most of the time. So this is a track by the band PB Underground. I don't have the book. I don't have a physical book. I've a downloaded version of a paid downloaded version, but it's a great book by a drummer called Pete Ray Biggin. He has his own band basically called PB Underground, or he has another project called P-Bug, I believe. It's all like sort of new funk. It's really great stuff. He's a killer player, and he done a transcription book of his album, Drums at the Front. It's a really awesome album. If you're into funk and stuff, I highly recommend checking it out. It's pretty cool. And for the past couple of months, well, I've got it for Christmas actually. So for the past, 6 months, I've just been playing my way through the book. And this is the last track actually. So not quite finished yet, but I figured I'd play for you guys. Quite a fun one. So I'm going to jump into that and play along with that. I am reading it here. Again, I'm still learning it, and I didn't intend to like memorize this book. So it's all just a bit fun for me to play along to some playing that I generally really like the drummers playing. So I'm going to play along to that, have a listen, and then hopefully a few more people will arrive by the time I've finished, and then we'll jump into today's lesson, which is just a general Q&A. So I've got two good questions lined up, and I want to get some questions for you guys. So Armin, if you're still here, please put a question in the chat. Anything, basically, whatever you think about, just chuck it in the chat, and I'll get round to answering it this live stream. I'd like to do a bit of a quick fire thing, so the more questions I get, the better, because I'm just going to run through a load of questions, give you a little bit of a taster of to answer the question, and then if you're interested in learning more, then we can jump into it in more detail during each individual lesson. So without further ado, I'm going to play along to this track. It's a good one. Have a listen, enjoy. Let me just change camera angles quick. Cool. Right. There's a click in this track. It's a bit annoying, but I don't know it well enough to play without a click yet. And there'd be no counting at the start, and it starts on a bit of a weird bit. So let me just check it works. Yep. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Right. Here we go. Enjoy, and then I'll jump into the lesson once a few more people have arrived after this.
was a part-time lover, but now I'm going for the kill. Cause you brought back the old me. It was something that you showed me. All the way that you hold me. I was chained for a lifetime. Could be with you for a lifetime. Can you give me just a lifeline? Maybe I could be the right guy. But the me when the time's right. And I know you know that we could be something special forever. I'm only trying to follow my heart. Give me a chance, I'm ready whenever. One taste was never enough. It feels great that we're falling in love. I was cold, now you're warming me up. And I know that you don't know me trust. But this time, it's alright. I'll be there, I'll be my whole life, baby. It's no lie. Let me tell you something I do in my life. That I feel in my eye. When you find the same, baby, just mine. Part-time lover, let me be your guy. No good alone. And I wanna share my
Cool. There you go. The same. Hey, Aidan. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Probably not the most sensible idea to do a live stream on an England Gay Day. Shows how much I pay attention to the football, hey. How long has it taken for me to learn the song I just played? It's a good question. I've been, in fact, I can tell you. So one of the things I recommend you do, if you want to get a better understanding about your practice, and let me bring this back. Hold on. Yeah, if you want to understand your practice a little better, one of the things you could do is track your time. And I may have talked to you specifically, Armin, about this previously, but if not, you should try this. There's a great app called Toggl, Toggl, and it's a time tracking app. So there's loads of interesting ways you can use it. I've been using it to track my personal work time and all sorts, but now I'm just basically using it as a practice tracker. So I will input all of my different things that I'm working on during I'm practicing, and then just press start, and then I can look back on things. So I can actually tell you exactly how long it's taken me. Bear in mind that's not fully learnt, so there's still a little bit of work to do, and I'm just kind of working my way through it. I'm not trying to learn it perfectly. A lot of that was if you had watched me play that, or if you'd tried to read the music along with that, you would have seen there was loads of bits that I missed. I was improvising it, so I'm talking myself down as. But let me have a look, and I will tell you roughly. Let's have a look. Oh, no, I can't. It won't break it down like that for me. Well, it's a difficult question to answer, really. But let's say, hold on. One. Maybe a good solid 5 hours of pretty solid practice just on that, playing along to a few things. The great thing about this book is they give you a beginner version, an intermediate, and advanced version. So that one was my own interpretation of the advanced one. So yeah, probably about sort of 5 hours worth of work. But it's I've just been doing it as a bit of fun. If I was learning this for a recital with drummers who do that, then I would be spending a lot longer focusing on a lot of the details. Cool. Okay, so let's jump into things. Again, if anyone has any questions, then just chuck them in the chat. Even if you can't stick around for the whole thing, feel free to chuck a question in. Go and watch the England game or whatever you want to do, and then come back and watch it on the catch-up or whatever. So, While you're here, a bit of housekeeping as normal. Please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and all of that, so you get the notifications when things are coming up. Obviously, I've been using the Discord thing this week to notify you guys about when the live streams are going ahead. I will keep doing that, and I will try and bear in mind the England games as well, so that you know, conflict of interest and all that. Please do make sure if you have, I think I'm going to do more general Q&As, and I've got a few questions from some students about things like learning songs and transcribing and all that kind of stuff. So at some point soon I need to do some transcription work. So I might do a live stream during the day, which again you can watch on a catch-up thing, about how I transcribe songs and stuff. So I want to try and leave a couple of interesting things to do during the summer holidays as well, because my evenings are usually quite busy, so it'd be good to do some live streams during the day where you guys can kind of actually come along and watch as well. I want to do, I've said it before in the previous live streams, I want to do a whole like reheading of this drum kit. Unfortunately, because of the COVID, like, what do you call it? Delay of the restrictions being lifted, a couple of my first gigs have been cancelled, so I don't actually need to rehead my kit as soon as I thought I was going to. So I may be able to do that in the summer holidays. So if I can, I will leave that and do that in the summer holidays, and I'll do like a really, really long live stream about reheading and retuning my whole kit, and I'll just set my camera up and answer questions as I go. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. I will try and make sure I do. I notify things on your Notion account as well, so keep an eye on that. But I'll be using the Discord as well. So if you have any questions about drumming, or you want to ask some of your other fellow drummers on your Discord on the Discord chat about who's your favorite drummer, or what's your favorite drum kit and all that kind of stuff, then just start having a conversation about drums. It's really fun to talk about drums, and I know when I went to college, one of my favourite things was being surrounded by drummers, so that's why I wanted to make that chat. So there's that. Cool. So the first question I had comes from James, and he asked a really, really great question that I'm going to try and freeball here. So creating drum fills, sorry, that's the title of today's thingy. So, ideas and tips for creating fills, especially rock, indie, and pop punk. So, I thought I would just see what comes out and give you a bit of a kind of some ideas to think about when it comes to trying to come up with drum fills specifically for the rock, indie, pop punk genre. Now, whether or not this is specific to that genre is a question. You could probably apply this in lots of different settings. So I'm just going to I'm going to show you a general way of thinking about drum fills. I'm sure a lot of this, because a lot of this will relate to those genres as well. And most contemporary music will sort of include this kind of style of drum fill. So I like to think of drum fills in a couple of different ways. Other than when someone says, here's a drum fill, learn this drum fill, we want to try and think, how can we be creative? How can we create our own drum fills? So that's the route I'm going to go. I'm not going to go down the route of, here's some licks, here's, learn these things. That's not kind of the way I like to go about things. There's if that is what you want, which is a perfectly acceptable way of learning, then head over to YouTube, as you probably already are here, and don't leave this video there. But go and watch some other drummers, because there'll be a whole world of drummers teaching my favorite drum fills, or indie drum fills, or pop punk drum fills, all that kind of stuff. So, and I also, in your teaching wiki, there's a page for YouTube channels. I put a whole list of YouTube channels that I recommend. So go and follow all those and watch some of those contents. So I'm going to come about it in a way of kind of creativity, and the thing that I wanted to talk about today is something that I may not have been through during any of your lessons, actually. Now, James specifically is working on his grade 6, so I know kind of roughly where his level's at. So I know I'm going to try and do a bit of beginner stuff and sort of jump through to similar sort of level to where James is at. So if I lose you, apologies, just ask about this during the drum lessons. So there's lots of different ways you could approach kind of coming up with drum fills. the way that we're going to do now is thinking about the kind of areas in which you can adapt something. So I'm going to take a rudiment, which is more or less the foundations of every drum fill is some form of rudiment, be it singles, doubles, paradiddles, whatever. And I'm going to look at how you can go about creating drum fills from those. I'm specifically going to look at the single stroke roll, just because it's going to be most familiar to all of you, and it actually works really, really well for rock, indie, and pop punk, which is specifically what James is asking about. So the single stroke roll, I'm going to play you some drum fills that make single stroke rolls look really dull and really boring, which is most of the time where you will sort of start off with, which for when you're starting is great. But James, you're grade 6, so you want more than just some simple single stroke drum fills around the kit. But let me play to you, I'm going to go up in tempo a little bit, because most rock, indie, pop punk is going to be 130 BPM plus, somewhere around about there. So I'm just going to take a simple pop punk drum groove, which you'll hear in a second, and I'm going to start with just playing 4 bars and 3 bars of groove, and then 1 bar of drum fill. And I'm going to start with single strokes on the snare drums. I might use 16th notes, or I might use 8th notes, or a combination. And I'm going to start with just playing it on the snare drum so you can hear where the single strokes fall, and then I'm going to orchestrate it around the kit. So the first creative method we're going to look at is orchestration, so which part of the drum kit you're going to play. So have a listen to this, I'll give you some examples. So 8th notes in that case. So you get the idea. Really super simple, but all I'm doing is orchestrating it. Now, that sounds okay, but we want to make it a bit more interesting. We want to try and come up with something a little bit more creative than that. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to play just the snare drum this time, and I'm going to look at a second way that you can vary your rudiment. Again, we're looking specifically single stroke, so I'm giving myself rules to be creative within. So I'm only working from single strokes at the moment. So no doubles, only singles. So this time, the thing that I'm going to change is the rhythm, and I'm going to start fairly simple with kind of combining maybe quarter notes, 8th notes, and 16th notes. I might include some triplets in there, and I might also use some kind of broken notes. Now, when I'm looking at things like broken 16th notes, you may change the sticking from single strokes. So depending on how far I go with this, I may end up changing the sticking a little bit, but it will all be based around the idea of a single stroke roll. So let's have a listen. So you get the idea. So all I was doing there was just combining different rates of speed. So combining quarter notes, 8th notes, 16th notes, some triplets, all sorts in there. So you can, if you want to, go down that route of experimenting specifically with saying, well, what happens if I combine 8th notes and 8th note triplets, for example, and how do I go about that? How will that change the sticking? that's perfectly valuable way of going. And what I would recommend you do, I've never done this, so I'm not practicing what I preach, just because this is not the way my head works, but I know it works for a lot of people, is to actually physically write those ideas out and be like, okay, I'm going to, let me come up with lots of combinations that I specifically am going to use 16th notes and triplets, for example. And maybe you say, okay, I'm also going to use broken 16th notes. So I'm going to do the 1, the E, and the R, and then I'm going to do a group of triplets, and then I'm going to do whatever you do, and you kind of write it out, and then you try and learn it, you bring it up to speed, and you think, cool, that sounds great. So that is the second variation, is rhythm. So we had the first one, orchestration, taking a rhythm, single strokes, and applying it around the kit, orchestrating it around the toms. Then we had the second one, which is rhythm. Now we can combine those, which we'll do a combination of stuff in a bit, but I would recommend you say, cool, let me take one of those rhythms, and I'm going to combine that around the drum with orchestration as well. Now, the way that the thing that I think is almost more interesting than any of those is dynamic. So I'm going to show you, I think I may have done this in a previous live stream, so apologies for anyone that's actually seen this before, but I'm going to play you a poorly written drum solo based around single strokes, but I'm going to specifically use dynamics with this. So by dynamics, I mean loud and quiet notes. Now, if you have more, well, I know James you have, but anyone else that's kind of watching, if you have gone through anything like the Moeller technique, using dynamics, so using accents and ghost notes and that kind of stuff, this stuff is a really, really great way of making your fills sound more interesting. So here we go. I'm going to play you, like I said, drum solo of a single stroke roll, single stroke. There might be some sort of, I might go right, left, right, left, right, for example. So technically, yes, there's a double stroke in there, but I'm basing it around the feeling of playing single strokes, even if I'm breaking those single strokes up a little bit. And I'm going to specifically stick to just the toms. And I'm going to, again, try and keep it up in around about that 130 sort of mark around there, maybe a bit faster. And just have a listen to some of the ideas. I'm going to start really, really simple, and then I'm going to start getting a little bit more complicated so you can sort of see where you can take specifically this dynamic or use of dynamic. I'm going to be combining this with those previous two as well. So I'm going to be, in fact, I will start with not combining it. So I'll play all on the snare drum and add some dynamics, and you'll hear accents and ghost notes and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to combine it with orchestration, and then I'll combine it with orchestration and rhythm as well. Get the idea. So again, all based more or less pretty much around single strokes, and using accents, again starting on the snare drum and then moving them around the toms and then using a combination of rhythm as well. So that's all well and good being able to solo with an idea like that, but let's try and put that into a fill context. Now, you have to remember that fills don't have to be a whole bar. So I'm going to do, just to finish this off, I'm going to go back to what I was doing a minute ago with groove and a bar of fill, but then I'm going to kind of deviate a little bit from that once I've done a couple of fills and start showing you kind of in context. And again, I'm going to maybe play everyone with crash cymbal just because I can be a bit more open. And again, it's going to translate that into maybe a chorus, for example, within a pop punk track is pretty much always going to be on the crash cymbal. And I'm going to add little drum fills, again, pretty much based around single stroke roll here. So have a listen and see what you think. And so on. So yes, it's all based around a single stroke roll, but there's so much more to a rudiment than just applying a paradiddle over the toms, for example. So my encouragement to you, specifically James, but also anyone else that's interested in creating drum fills, I didn't do that last bit actually of like small drum fills, but for time's sake we'll move on. The thing I would encourage you to do is start thinking about the simple stuff and how you can make the simple stuff interesting. When it comes to creativity, I stand by, go and look at, there's a video somewhere online with a drummer called Benny Greb, and he talks about improvising, and he talks about kind of two things, rinse and repeat, or I don't know what he calls it, improvise and repeat, and basically the idea of trying to improvise something and then copy it, and you'll find that really difficult and really great for your creativity. But also the idea of limitations. So the limitation in that particular context at the end there was 1 bar drum fill, which again I know I said I was going to do something else, but it doesn't matter, and single stroke rolls. Other than that, I had freedom to orchestrate it, to change the rhythm, to change the dynamic there. There are other ways you can change things, but for now I think those 3 things are going to get you so far when it comes to kind of creating drum fills. So Armin has another question. Thank you for your questions, Armin. When playing a ghost note during a song, what's the right balance so that you can still be heard but it stays relatively quiet? Take a drink, hold on. That, Armin, is a really valuable question, and it's going to really depend on the context. So let's take, for example, 3 contexts. A live performance, let's just say in a pub or in a small venue, with no mics on the drum kit, in a recording environment like this with loads of mics on the drum kit, and then in, let's say, in your practice room or in a rehearsal room or something like that with a band. So with those 3 situations, you're going to have to adapt your dynamic, both with your ghost notes, but also with your overall dynamic, be it the blend of how loud is my bass drum in comparison to my snare drum. If you're playing in certain rooms in a live setting, you might want to play a lot louder with your bass drum than you would with your snare drum, just because of the size of or shape of the room, for example. If you're in a recording environment, you want to be thinking about, okay, well, everything is being captured really well, which is great. It means that you can just play away and you can always turn the toms up, for example. But you really want to imagine, okay, well, how do these microphones sound? The overhead microphones are going to be capturing your whole picture. And if your snare drum's super loud and everything else is really quiet, then your snare drum is just going to come through the overheads too much in comparison to everything else. The most common issue with overheads is usually cymbals. So everyone, in fact, that's the most common issue that I have when I'm balancing myself with overhead microphones, is playing the cymbals too loud. Cymbals sound great when they're smashed quite hard. You get a lot of the kind of nice trashiness to a crash cymbal when you play it at a decent volume, but it can sometimes be a bit overpowering for the overheads, which means that the snare drum and toms and stuff don't come out quite as much. But to answer your question specifically in the relation of ghost notes, so typically when it comes to, let's ignore those contexts. Let's just think in general first, and then you can adapt those depending on those contexts. So normally we like to aim for ghost notes to be very quiet and accents to be very loud. Now I've gone kind of the opposite way, and I'll play you a drum groove really quickly with me being as quiet as I can with the ghost notes and as loud as I can with the accent. And I'm going to play it on the ride just to give me a little bit more space with my left hand to exaggerate that. So have a listen, and I'm just going to play a nice simple drum groove with some ghost notes, really, really quiet ghost notes and really loud backbeat. So I can't say exactly how that's translating for you. Hey James, I just answered your question. You missed it. You have to go back and watch it on catch up. Sorry, I answered your question first because I thought you'd be around, but don't worry. So what you would have heard there is, and I don't know what the balance is like for you, but at least in my in-ears there, I could barely even hear the ghost notes, especially because I was playing on the ride cymbal and added some crash cymbals in. If you then add guitars, bass, pianos, vocals on top of that, you're never going to hear that. And for me, one of the things that one of my drum teachers at college told me was to play your ghost notes about an inch or so, an inch and a half or so from the drum head, and your accents much louder than that, so 12 inches plus really. And I kind of took that to the extreme of being like, right, how quiet can I get my ghost notes and how loud can I get my accents, like I was doing there, which is good for your control, but not so good for the sound. So normally what I suggest you do is attempt to get your ghost notes as quiet as possible, because most commonly the issue with your ghost notes is they're too loud. That is the most common thing, which is what my teacher should have, or was the point that he was making, was that most of the time you want your ghost notes to be a lot quieter, and maybe an inch is a bit too quiet, but if you start with an inch you can always grow it a bit louder from there. So when it comes to trying to find the right balance, let me read your question again. When it comes to balancing that, a really great context to understand that is a recording studio environment, which I know pretty much everyone isn't going to have that facility. But you could always, if you can use GarageBand or Ableton or something, record your drums along to a drumless backing track and add some ghost notes in. And guess what? If you can't hear your ghost notes, they're too quiet. If you can hear them and it almost sounds like a normal snare drum, they're too loud. And really that kind of brings me home to that main point, which is you should be listening. And when I was listening to myself there, I could barely hear that. So let me do another one where I'm going to go from quiet to medium to roughly where I think is balanced, sorry, and then too loud. And I'll play basically the same thing. And what you'll hear here is hopefully you'll hear a little bit of a balance, and then when I play them too loud, it just ends up sounding like a normal snare drum. Get the idea. So it's all about listening to yourself and then balancing from that. You'll get a feel for it, and again, the more you listen to yourself, be it in recordings or just whilst you're playing, the more you'll balance that. but it's about having control. You noticed, well, hopefully you would have noticed there that I was able to do each of those. I've spent a really long time working on that. So I've spent the time making my ghost notes really quiet, and that allowed me to play them too quiet, which meant I could then come back and I can learn that balance. So it also means in a setting where I'm playing a little bit lighter, I can still play ghost notes because I can still play ghost notes even quieter. And it's balancing your sound overall is really, really great question. It's unfortunately the answer to most of the time is experience and listening, which is just time. Cool, right, great. Keep the questions coming on if you've got any more. I don't know if, James, if you have any other questions, if you're still here. I've answered you one about drum fills. No worries. Yeah, I thought so about the game, yeah. Sorry, I should have thought about it tonight. I don't follow the football, so who knew an England game was being played? Obviously everybody else apart from me. So yeah, no worries. If you have another question, though, James, I've answered your one about drum fills, so feel free to chuck a one in there, and if I get time, I'll answer it. I'm only going to do about another 10 minutes, so make sure if you do put it in now, and I'll get around to answering that. So the other question I've got here comes from Rahul, and Rahul asks basically general tips and stuff on controlling drags. And I just thought I would go through my general sort of. I'm going to move the camera so you can see the top. I think it'll be better. I'm just going to go through a general little reminder. Now, Rahul, if you're watching this, I know you're probably not here at the moment, but if you watch on the catch-up, then we've probably been through this already. But hey, here's a video to remind you. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to try and do this without having to keep turning my mic off. So I'm going to, is that going to be too loud? Oh, it's going to be way too loud. I need to bring my practice pad over, but let's do what we can. I'll just keep turning this off and on. So the first thing that we want to do is learn to control the bounce of the drumstick for your drags. So a really great way of doing this, and I'm not going to get into this in too much detail, but the great way of doing this is to be as loose as you can, hold your finger underneath the drumstick, and then place the drumstick on the drum like that, and then lift the tip of the drumstick, and then drop the drumstick down. Turn this off. So you're just allowing the drumstick to bounce there. If you can do the same thing with your thumb on top and it doesn't change the amount of bounce, excellent. If you can do the same thing with all fingers on the stick and it doesn't change the bounce very much, amazing. That's kind of where you want to be. Notice I'm in French timpani grip here. It helps kind of facilitate this particular thing, but you can do the same thing in German grip, which is how I will play drags. So from here, I'm just going to show you that. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, drop the stick, and then put my thumb on the stick and do it again, and then put my fingers on the stick, and it's all about being super, super loose, allowing the drumstick to bounce. So there is going to be some sort of stopping of the bounce. I can't think of the right word, but as little as possible. So from there, once you can be as loose as you can, the next thing is to add some kind of downwards pressure on your thumb to press the stick into the head to speed up that bounce, like this. And eventually you end up like the end there where it's just a quick buzz note. So then once you've done that, the next step is to try and control the amount of bounces. So I'm going to go back to the slow one, so very little pressure, and I'm going to try and play I try and do 3 notes. I find a 3 is quite a healthy amount. So I'm going to try and let the drumstick bounce 3 times and stop the drumstick on the 3rd one. And again, I'm not adding any pressure there. I'm just dropping the drumstick, not throwing the drumstick down as well. There's barely any energy there. I'm just letting the drumstick do the work. From there, you can combine that now. I can add a bit of pressure and control the amount of bounces. So I'm going to do 3 bounces, and I'm going to speed those 3 bounces up by adding downwards pressure with my thumb. so on. You get the idea. Then, once you get comfortable with that, do the same thing, but aim for 2 notes. So this is sort of doubling your note and trying to add some pressure to give you 2 notes from there. Once you've done that, you can then bring that back into the drag by playing 2 notes followed by an accent. And if you start with it slow and you run through those same processes that we just did there, but with 2 notes, and you try and get 3 notes with the third one being an accent, and you do this either leading with the right or leading with the left, then you're on your way to good control with your drag. So like this. And so on. So again, that's all just what I talked about there, controlling the amount of pressure that you're putting down to speed up the bounce of the stick, and also trying to control the amount of bouncing, trying to get 2 bounces, and then adding the accent at the end there. And it will feel very much like a flam where you're playing 1 note before the for the next, but you're adding a you're doubling that note by adding some pressure on there. Now you can, if you want to get into a lot more control with your drags, then the answer to that would be to learn a push-pull double stroke technique, which we will go through at some point specifically for you, Rahul, if we haven't already. And that is kind of typically how I will play, depending on the sort of style of drag you're looking for, how a lot of drummers will play with actually physically playing 2 notes using something like a push-pull or drop grab or whatever you want to call it. So that is essentially how to control your drags. Question. Might not be something for today, but I'd like to hear a bit about sound engineering, working at concerts, and what's involved in that kind of job. That is a really awesome question. Maybe what I will do, I'm not going to pretend like I am an industry master, but I've tried a lot of different things and have reasonable amount of experience in the kind of small world of music, in the music industry. You know, I've not played Wembley Stadium, for example, but I played a lot of gigs and I understand the kind of ethos of doing that. I've also done sound engineering as a bit of a job, and I do it occasionally from time to time, so I understand the kind of pressures and the kind of work habit of a sound engineer. So that is an amazing question, James. But yes, as you say, might not be something for today. In short, though, a bit about sound engineering / working at concerts. I'd be interested to see if you mean like sound engineering in general, like in a studio, or do you mean live sound engineering, like at working at concerts, for example? Which way do you mean there? Not sure if you see that, but so yeah, I think I could tackle both of those anyway at some point. But yeah, maybe I'll do a Q&A specifically about like industry work, like what is it like being a professional drummer, and where do you get your work from for a professional drummer? Because even though, yes, you guys know me as your drum teacher, that's part of my career is teaching drums, and obviously being a professional drummer, the other obvious part would be playing in bands and doing live work, be it like function bands like weddings or originals music or whatever it would be. But the other side of my career is also audio engineering as well. Maybe more specifically, live sound engineering is another sort of source of income for me, but also sort of studio production as well, and they are very different beasts. So yeah, maybe just let me know which one what you kind of mean, if you mean live sound engineering or whether you mean and working at concerts, or whether that's kind of one thing. I can kind of tackle both of those another time. Cool, awesome. Right, I'm going to end it there. Let you guys get back to the football, and I'm not going to go and watch the football because it's not my thing. So thanks for joining in again. Just a quick reminder as well, anyone that's watching on the catch-up, keep an eye on the Discord thing, and I'll be notifying when I next do live streams and stuff. I'm going to maybe doing them a little bit less regularly, so every couple of weeks or so, or maybe once a month or so, until we sort of get in the swing of things. And I'm also going to, like I said at the start there, think about maybe doing some more during the summer, like reheading my drum kit or transcribing songs and things like that. So any specific questions, maybe like that sound engineering one, James, I will maybe do a particular segment like that. I've had, like I said, I had one about like writing and learning songs, and I figured that would work quite well as like a transcribing one. So I may do something like that, but I'll probably just do general Q&As for a little while. So please do fill in as many questions as you can in your Notion account, and I'll be adding those to my live questions. I've got a few more left, but I'm running out. So please do put some questions in there. Otherwise, I have nothing to talk about. So cool, right. Go enjoy the football, and I'll see you guys all very soon.